Thank you very much for that. I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dubes & Co with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel of journalists and former spin doctor Joe Phillips, and alongside her, the chairman of the Great British Political Action Committee, Ben Habib. Welcome to both of you. We just had a fascinating conversation before this programme aired. We were talking about, what you wear when you're not at work and you're not suited and booted. And I was explaining that I can more often than not be found in a slanket. And guess what? Ben Habib had no idea, ladies and gents, what a slanket is. I can't believe how out of touch some people are. He then went on to say, and he'll get embarrassed about this, he then went on to say, that sounds quite naughty. I've got to say, many of you will be sitting there watching this tonight in a slanket or two. I hate to burst Ben Habib's bubble, but they are the complete opposite of what he may imagine them to be. I don't even think I did explain what one is. Anyway, look, we've got more pressing matters to talk about than blankets and slankets, but it is quite cold tonight, though, isn't it? I want you to join the conversation all the usual ways. Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay, or of course you can tweet or you can X me. Let's start with some good news then, shall we? Growth figures. We've been pontificating about what will happen to the UK economy. There's even been some people suggesting we might have gone into potential recession, but oh no, ladies and gents. Instead, we had growth of 0.7%. This, of course, is for the first quarter. It was predicted to have been 0.6, so better than expected. Rachel Reeves speaking out about that. Let's listen to what Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, had to say.
We're set to be the fastest growing economy in the G7 in the first 3 months of this year. And that's incredibly welcome. But I know that there is more to do. The cost of living crisis continues to affect families right across our country. I understand that and I hear that. But despite the challenges that we face, our economy is strong.
Are you feeling optimistic today?
No, I think she, as ever, was talking unadulterated nonsense. First things first, our government's obsession and successive administrations' obsession with looking at GDP, I think, has been a false obsession. They should have been looking at productivity in this country. They should have been looking at GDP per capita. They should have been looking at the number of people who are actually in work, how many people are not having to rely on universal credit in order to survive. Our national debt needs to be under control. Taxation needs to be at a level which people can afford to pay their taxes and then have enough left over to live on. And every metric, with the exception of this one metric in the last quarter, is moving in an adverse direction. And I think perhaps the worst metric of the lot, I was horrified to see this, and I know I've talked about this number on this programme before, is the number of people now on universal credit. Now, before the pandemic, there were about 3 million people on universal credit. When we came out, and I've been monitoring it, to some extent since then, we came out of the pandemic with over 6 million people on universal credit to a greater or lesser extent. Last year, that had gone up. Some of those
people are being work.
So, yeah, 1.5 million of those 6 were in work. 1.5 million of the people who are on universal credit are still in work. But the figure now is 7.7 million people. That is a sign that the United Kingdom literally is not working. And then I think the other really bad metrics that you won't hear Rachel Reeves revealing to the public is that government debt is accelerating away from even what the OBR had forecast when she made those massive spending obligations in the budget last year when she raised employers' national insurance. So she is now going to have to face either an increase in taxation or cutting welfare and benefits. Obviously, she needs to get welfare and benefits under control. But this is a government, actually, frankly, that is out of control as far as our economy is concerned. We have been practicing the same economic model for the last 30 years, and they keep doing more of the same and not realising that it's getting worse and worse and worse. And what they absolutely have to wake up to, which the Trump administration has woken up to, is that we need less government spending, we need less taxation. They've got to have the courage to cut taxes on the working middle classes and small and medium-sized enterprises in particular. They have to deregulate the economy, they have to ditch net zero, and then you will get the coming together of an economic ecosystem that will be able to stand on its own 2 feet and genuinely grow. But the idea that you get 1/4 of actually what in historic terms would be regarded as anemic economic growth, and then start banging the drum talking about we've turned the corner is absolutely crazy.
Yeah, but to be fair to her, she did say as well it was a bit too early to be getting the champagne corks out also as well.
She said we turned a corner.
She said we were beginning to turn.
We haven't turned any corner. This country is on the precipice of economic disaster.
It's like one of those corners. Anyone that's rang for a taxi, you know, if you've ever called for a taxi, you're sitting there, where's my taxi, where's my taxi? It's just around the corner. I think it's one of those kind of taxi corners that she might be referring to, never-ending corner. But anyway, go on, Jo.
Well, I think, you know, it is... She didn't say it is time for celebration, and I don't think anybody has. And I think, you know, Mel Stride, who's the Shadow Chancellor, quite rightly said this is not a time for popping champagne corks. And, of course, it is anemic growth, but it is going in the right direction. I think the challenge will really come in the next quarter, which will be after the increase in employers' national insurance kicks in. That's
already had an impact, Jo.
Well, it will do on some, but we won't see it properly.
No, not in those figures it won't, because that was the first quarter.
I mean, businesses, in advance of NI going up, businesses have been sacking people.
Yes, I know.
That's why universal credit is 7.7 million people.
I am absolutely aware of that, but we will be able to see when we see the figures again for the next quarter. I mean, interestingly, completely independent, the senior UK economist at HSBC said she was quite cheered by the figures because she said business investment is up nearly 6% on the quarter and the service sector is doing so as well. And it may have an impact on interest rate. I think the problem is that, you know, OK, we can nitpick about whether it's good, bad or indifferent. The reality for most people is that they are seeing shops, pubs, hairdressers, you know, if you like, the beating heart of high streets in so many places closing for a variety of reasons, the increase in employers' national insurance, increase in council tax and so on and so forth. So people don't feel the benefit from this. But if this sends a signal that actually, you know, things are better, then that has got to be good, and we shouldn't talk it down. It's the direction of travel.
I'm not talking it down, but there's got to be a connection.
It's being negative. That's her point. That's what you're trying to say to him, isn't it, Jo?
There's got to be a connection with reality.
Yeah, but the reality
0.7% GDP growth in a quarter was what we used to hit repeatedly in the early 2000s.
Yeah, but
we haven't had GDP... Jo, let me just finish. We haven't had GDP growth per capita for 12 quarters on the trot. Yeah. This country has not grown. We are getting poorer.
But you can't blame that on this government.
I absolutely blame it on a economic policy that was set in the Blair years that every administration has followed, which is higher regulation, higher taxation, more government borrowing, more government intervention, more spending, coupled with this obsession with GDP growth, which has given them cause to, in part, deliver mass migration, because they think the more people we get in this country, the faster GDP will grow. And no one's made the connection between productivity, the need for people to be rewarded well for the work that they do, and for those who are not working, not to have the incessant and slanket, or what did you call it? The slanket of the state around their
Can you ask somebody to send in a photograph so we can put him out of his misery?
I've got to tell you, because I am, whilst these guys talk, I multitask, so I do. So I look at what you guys are saying as well, and you're making me laugh, because on Twitter, the thing that's got you talking is what a slanket is. So I've got people writing in telling me what a slanket is, and I've got other people saying that they've no idea what a slanket is, that you're all Googling slankets. If you don't know what a slanket is, I don't know where you've been, ladies and gents. It'll save you an absolute fortune. You don't need to put your heating on. You can just get inside one of those things. You will be so toasty, you won't believe it. And I can't believe how out of touch you are not knowing what it is. It reminds me, many years ago, I did newspaper reviews on a different channel with Michael Portillo.
Yeah.
And for some reason, we were talking about favourite books. And he was kind of indulging the viewers with the tales of his favourite book, and it was, you know, very highbrow. And when it came to my turn and they asked what was my favourite book, I remember saying the Argos catalogue. And I remember Michael Portillo looking at me as though I was like from an alien with about 10
But
heads.
he was probably thinking Argos, you know, in Greek mythology.
Yeah, but anyone, I mean, I can assure you what I was thinking was back to the heady days of a childhood. You used to go to Argos, you used to
Tiny
go
little
up to
pens.
the counter. Yeah, and these things were like doorstops, and you used to go through them and you used to circle what you wanted from Santa. And Santa never really seemed to get my memos. I don't really think he spent too much time flicking through that catalogue, because I didn't ever get that Mr. Frosty. I've never got over it. Anyway, look, I do digress. If you've got a picture of you in a slanket and you want it to show it to
Or
Ben
someone
Habib,
else
feel
in a
free.
slanket.
Yes, of course. Look, coming up after the break, I'll let him compose himself. He's got images running through his head, I can tell you.
Well, I think it's a blanket, isn't it?
No.
You did not think it was a blanket before the start of this
that's what I've come
programme.
round to.
I can tell you that's why I need to give him a few seconds to compose himself, I think.